All right, we are live. Good evening, friends. Welcome to the episode 21 of the Career Shifts podcast. First, I want to extend a warm Diwali greeting to you and your families, wishing you all a joyful, light filled, and prosperous Diwali. We all know Diwali as a festival of lights, but for me, it's always been a time of reinvention. It's a moment to reflect on where we are, what's holding us back, and where we want to go. Diwali isn't just about brightening our homes, it's about lighting up from within. It's a perfect time to reset, not just in life, but in our careers as well. As we celebrate, I encourage you to take a step back and reflect on your career, reflect on your path. Just like we honor traditions, take a moment to assess your career, what's been working, what's no longer working for you. Ignite new possibilities. As we light diyas, think about what possibilities you can ignite in your career. Is it time to make a shift? Try something bold. Reconnect with your purpose. Diwali is also about connection. It's a time to reconnect with your career goals. Are you still aligned with your purpose? Are you on the path that fulfills you? And that brings me to the guest today, Ashutosh Sinha, or Ashu as I know him. I first met him in 2013 during a time of my career transition. I was seeking guidance, and we have stayed in touch ever since. In these 11 years, I have seen him grow in incredible ways, and he's been a constant source of inspiration for me. In 2019, Ashutosh published his book, Breakthrough: The Framework for an Inspired Career. I picked it up right away, and I quickly realized it's not just a book, it's a roadmap for anyone contemplating a career shift. The insights he shares aligns so well with the core themes of this podcast: embracing change, staying resilient, and building a career that truly reflects who you are at your core. Over the last 5 years, Ashu and I have reconnected more often, and he's become more a mentor to me now. His perspectives on both business and careers on global scale have been invaluable. It's been incredible to see how he leads and inspires. So today, I'm thrilled to have him here with us on the Career Shifts podcast. In today's episode, Ashu will share his pivotal moments of his own journey, those breakthrough moments that shaped him as a leader. We'll talk about embracing change, leading diverse teams, and most importantly, creating a career that's meaningful and aligned with who you are. Get ready for more reflective and inspiring conversation with one of the most thoughtful leaders I know. Let's dive in. Ashu, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Gopal. And first of all, very happy Diwali greetings to everyone across who is listening to the show or will be listening to the show later. And I hope it brings a lot of luck, prosperity, and great career prospects for all of you. And everything Gopal said is not a lie, but he's too kind. So thank you so much for the generous introduction there. And I'm very
Wonderful.
happy to be on this amazing career shift or reinvention series which you've started. It's a great initiative, and I truly, truly appreciate it and want to support in every way possible. It's superb.
Thank you, Ashu. And I think it's been kind of you to be there on the show today, because I think we have spoken about this several times in the last so many years about the shifts that I was making or the shifts that were happening around us. And what I have often realized in the last couple of years or so, more so often after COVID, is that the shifts are becoming a lot more different than how it used to be in the past. You kind of go horizontally also into different industries, different sectors. I mean, I went through that myself with my couple of years stint at IIM Ahmedabad, and I'm sure there is a lot more questions that people are going to have or are having about how to make these transitions possible. So thank you for being on the show. Before we begin, with the questions that I have for you, any thoughts that you want to start this podcast with? Any opening thoughts or anything that comes to your mind?
Gopal, I think it's a very pertinent time to do this kind of a podcast or topic conversation because in my role of passion, as I call it, to guide people on their careers and leaders and CXOs across the world, I'm increasingly coming across lots of mid senior leaders and very senior leaders who are getting struck by the lightning or the thunderbolt when everything seems to be going well,
Yeah.
and that is becoming a reality in many ways. While there are a lot of good things happening as well, but the people who are actually on the receiving side of what happened to them uh, know that success has many fathers, failures has none. So they find themselves very lonely and on the
Yeah.
side of the shore trying to look for help. And that's one place where I believe we as industry need to come together and see how we can help all those individuals, because they're a lot tied to their themselves from a salary standpoint or from a career standpoint.
Yeah. Completely agree. And I think it was interesting that you're sharing this. Um, Not only people who are at their mid careers, but also people who are coming into industry right now are not very clear about with what blueprint should I enter the job market. I was having an interesting conversation with a professor in one of the top notch institutes in the country, and he was saying a lot of students these days are um, behind or chasing some of the roles that probably never existed 5 years ago, but perhaps they may not exist in the next 2 to 3 years as well. So it's going to be a very interesting time in terms of careers for all of us that we are going to see. So, thank you again for being on the show. Um, Ashu, typically we start the podcast with a thought on how successful things have been. Um, but before we get to that point of conversation, um, in your 28 years of career, you've kind of moved into many roles. Do you want to quickly reflect upon some of those pivotal moments for people who would be listening to you, your story, who probably may not know you as much as some of the others would?
That's a great question, and such questions are obviously reflective. So, uh, I believe that one of the things which every career has uh, is people who take you across the shore in different points of time when you're midstream in your career. And to me, I have been very fortunate to have some great mentors, guides, and people who have been able to give me the direction when I needed it most. If I go back right to my early start my career as an engineer, I was not born to be an HR guy, to be very honest. I was an engineer, hard hat, working in a organization called Sales, steel hard hat engineer, working in a blast furnace. And that is how my career started. And I loved it because I always wanted to be an engineer. But somehow, during the course of time, Mr. M.F. Mehta, who was the ISCO chairman and also, and God bless his soul, he was a great part of that organization. He spotted something in me and he said, "Why don't you be among those?" And there are other similar people. There was someone who was the HR leader there, Mr. Chandrasekhar Mukherjee, and the other people who said I should participate more on the people side of things along with my engineering. That gave me an idea that maybe I am somewhere inside having a passion to drive and work with people from a professional standpoint. And then much later in my career, as I was the recruiting head and HR head of a organization called Sapient, recruiting head first, and then I became the HR head later for another organization. I met Jackie Lynham Lewis, who is also now on the board of Seintiv, and she encouraged me to look beyond myself. And I moved so fast in that organization in my early days that I had no choice but to be proving who I truly was up to the bar they wanted me to be. So I continuously had to reinvent my bar, my own self, and be to the expectations of the organization and to my mentor. And then I moved on, and then I was in Deloitte, and there I met Mr. Nathan, who was again a great leader who challenged me in numerous ways, and I moved very fast up there as well. So different parts of my career, I met different people. I came to Landmark, Nisha Jagtiani, who was one of the family members, challenged me in various ways, and she propelled me in a way, reverse mentored me, I would say, in different ways, I would say, to 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 push me beyond my uh, thinking of a HR guy and made me a more holistic business person. Or working with Mr. Mukesh Ambani was the same experience. I started thinking more like a business person than an HR person early in my career. So somewhere these small shifts change you from being who you are to be where you can more useful to the industry. And all these, whether you with the family owners or working with mentors, gives you a bit of a kick on the left to say like, listen, you're not so good as yet. Maybe you should look at yourself and make another shift, make another change to be a better yourself. And that better version of myself has continuously been something I've strived for, and I still strive every single day. And that makes me wake up in the morning with excitement that I have something to look forward to. So that's truly where I've lived my journey, and I continue to live my journey, and makes it very exciting for me.
Lovely, lovely. And we'll come to what you do today in a bit. But I like the point that you said about, success has many fathers and failures have none. But when you are in a career which is as long as a lot of people typically have, I mean, the average tenure of career is also increasing as we see the life expectancy grow across the world. But at the same time, the number of jobs are kind of going inversely proportional, wherein the tenure that people spend in a particular role is reducing as well. So we kind of live in interesting times where um, we kind of go through organizations and roles not knowing if this is meant for our success or not. I'm sure in your last 28 years you may have your moments of reflections or moments where things didn't go as you had planned. Do you want to reflect on that particular part? Because what I exceedingly hear these days is people are unable to figure out what failure means, how should they get out of it, and it's more like a taboo, and they don't even go about seeking help. So, I mean, how do we wrap our heads around this, and any experience that you have had that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, no, I think like a lot of people, as a careerist, I've always had my own moments of disappointments, missed opportunities, and things which I thought would happen would not have happened. As from outside, people might think that, oh, he's been an amazing stellar track record, and this guy's going such a fast pace. But one thing which has kept me going, I do want to address that first is, and I said that on another show the other day, was that for me, my biggest mentor, beyond all the wonderful mentors I mentioned, the family owners, my mentors, bosses, has been failures. I keep
Mm,
them on the top right quadrant of my, mentoring community, as I say. And every time I've had some failure or some moment of disappointment, I have picked it up and kept it as a jewel in my repository to go back and look at that and say, what happened there exactly? Right? And how can I learn from it? And that has taught me incredible lessons because every time I've learned from there, it's taken me one step forward to the direction, not about repeating and not repeating that, but it's more about learning and being able to go in a direction which truly matters for me and the organization which I work for. So that to me has been my approach. Uh, dealing with the disappointments is very hard for anyone, and I've had
true.
been, obviously hit by a few in my career. And when that has happened, what I've done is I've taken the courage to first of all call up and speak to someone who I trust very openly, and that could be my wife, who is also one of my home coaches, if you might say, an true advisor. It could be my one of my board of mentors across the world, anywhere, would pick up my phone every night, maybe midnight, and I'd call them. And it's not to vent out; it's to share this happened, and why did this happen? What happened here? And that conversation is very important, very meaningful. I feel because if we shy away from that conversation, a lot of people
True.
do. You never truly look in the mirror. You can blame the world about your failures, but if you look in the mirror and learn something from that, like I said, it truly makes you who you are in the next few steps which you're going to take. So that's been my mantra. That's how worked for me, and I've really lived by it even today.
Wonderful. I remember once, I think I was talking to our common friend, Tarun Nallu, who's in Singapore right now. And one of the things he told me once was, Gopal, you got to learn to be brutally honest to yourself. And if you do that, then I think it makes our lives a lot more easy. And I've lived by that. I mean, at the end of the day, there are moments which are extremely tough, where you know that this is what you had planned and it didn't work the way you planned for it, and you kind of hit a point where things start falling apart. And even in that, there are moments of reflection which makes you believe that there could be things that you could have done differently. And you could see that only if you're brutally honest to yourself. So really appreciate you sharing this thought, Ashu. Um, at the end of the day, careers, your career especially, has had multiple geographies, and you've kind of moved from one country to another. How did you manage those transitions from two perspectives? One, working with different kind of people with different values, beliefs, behaviors isn't that easy for a lot of people. And also, how did that impact your leadership? If you may want to share some thoughts on that.
So, one good thing which I give a lot of credit to in my experience is that I've had the great opportunity in my early days to work with diverse set of organizations. So, not that I was hopping jobs, but I'm saying more from a perspective of having worked with a pure Indian organization as an engineer, and then moving on to working with the U.S. multinational, uh, and understanding the culture code, as you'd call it, right? That what matters in different organizations, uh,
Correct.
and different people who are across the call, talking to you. Even in those days when the videos were not there, we used to be on the call bridge. Someone
Yes.
like speak over you, and someone could not speak over you. But you could learn from that also that, hey, listen, certain cultures can speak loud and clear, and it's not about a shouting match, but you got to learn how to deal with it and get your point across, even if you're a soft speaker. Very simple thing.
Interesting.
Similarly, as I grew up to be slightly senior leader in other organizations, um, U.S. organizations, non-U.S. organizations, and or hybrid Indian and multinational organizations, and I moved countries, whether it was the US, whether it was the Middle East, or other parts of the world. I learned one thing, that the place it starts with is the respect for the individual you're talking to. Because we are very quick in making judgments about diversity,
Yes.
right? We have our own windows of the mind, which we look for, and we can say that, hey, that person not thinking my way, and therefore doesn't understand me,
Yeah.
or the call or the meeting didn't go my way. But what we don't realize is that maybe the person doesn't mean anything wrong to you. Maybe the conversation is probably you're not thinking from the lens of the person, because there's a different cultural code to that person, different cultural context to that person. So having that context in your mind is very important when you work with diverse organizations across countries. And that's been my
Mm.
biggest learning. And I would say that's been one reason why I would like to believe, to a fair extent, I've been good at it and I've
Mm.
enjoyed it as well, because I've kept that context always when I speak to people, that where is the person coming from when they speak. And that respect, that humility is very, very important.
Wonderful. And I think knowing the culture code, I think, is the most powerful thing that I heard from you. So it doesn't really come naturally to a lot of us because we end up judging, and probably worth reflecting on what could be done differently. Any tips on, or any books that you recommend for people to, or any place where they could learn more about this part of um, understanding culture better? Um,
See, I there are tons of books on this, and I could definitely refer a few, but there nothing replaces experience on this. And while I'm a big fan of books, I think nowadays what's replaced or the learning beyond books, in addition to books. I love books and I continue to buy and read a lot of books. But the one thing which kind of is podcasts and people who can look at, whether it's Apple Podcast or Amazon Podcast or Spotify, just go and find the culture podcasts. Uh, there are enough of them.
sure,
So that's because they're live conversations that give you the learning.
sure.
In addition to that, I would say that do not be afraid on a networking platform. That could be anything, right? That could be a LinkedIn, that could be a social site, to connect with people who are beyond your culture. We
Mm,
often like to, because it's our comfort zone, we like to stick to, birds of feather, same feather flock together. So we like to stick
yeah,
to our feather birds around us. So it's good to break away and drop the sense of reluctance to or be shy to connect across, and that is very powerful, because when you do that, there's nothing beats that experience. It's uncomfortable for sure, but it takes you to a new level in your maturity curve of understanding diverse cultures and how to deal with it. Like the example I gave, I have only learned it the way, and I've sometimes maybe been laughed at as well in my early days because someone did not understand my way of culture. At the same time, I enjoyed and looked at it how and why that happened, and that experience made me wiser. So I think I would just summarize, say, books, podcasts in that order, and definitely the aspect of experiencing it yourself is very important.
wonderful, wonderful. Um, Ashut, today you work with a lot of very senior leaders, and you've been a senior leader yourself for a while, doing really meteor roles in large multinational organizations. And today you kind of have set your own firm up. Um, what is your sense that is going on, or what is giving sleepless nights, if at all I can say, to a lot of people in the C-suite? Um, any thoughts on that?
I guess there are three factors which are impacting people most nowadays. Number one, talent is a huge issue.
Mm,
Now, it's a very strange dilemma talent is going through.
yeah.
There's a demand like never before for the right talent. I'm putting the right talent as an underscore, double underscore word there.
Yeah.
And there's a demand for the right jobs by the talent.
Mm,
So there's a mismatch. There are people out there who are available to take jobs, and there are jobs out there who are available, which are available to find people, but they're not filling. And the
yeah.
reason is because a CXO or a CEO is looking for people who are the right fit in this era based on what might have changed. And what has changed? Post pandemic has been one factor, post economic shifts has been another factor, environmental shifts, a third factor, geopolitical battles have been the fourth factor. There's so many things happening. And because of that, what they're looking for is someone who's understands, can hit the ground running, is a leader who has got the humility to work as a kid and at the same time be senior enough to mature enough to act like a wise mature leader. And somewhere the middle generation is getting trapped between the two. At the same time, the youngsters, the young adults who are entering the workforce, they're getting kind of caught in a bit of a whirlpool at what is the right career selection.
Sure.
Because the CEO's mantra may be to look for that young leader who can be wise enough, who can have enough knowledge of understanding and experience. And there's a bit of a dichotomy because at one level, you're ignoring the wise old men and women and whatever genders people who are actually with great experience, because They are not because they're too old, there's nothing like that, but because you want to add in more energy and a new flavor to your business. And on the other hand, they are mid and young people who are ready to take it on, but are not getting it because they just don't have, quote unquote, sometimes the maturity, in the words of the takers. So if you see, where is the talent then? That is the talent. And if you're not finding between these three different subgroups of talent, age group or experience group, whatever you might call, it is not going to come magically. So I think what's really happening in the industry is that the sense of navigation is in demand like never before. What you need
Mm,
is, the glue between the employer, between the CEO, and the employee, or the talent seeker, talent finder, and the talent seeker glue is missing. And that glue is not being served by job boards or social networks anymore. That's a huge problem today. At Seintiv, we recently did a research paper which proved that in the next 3 years, we're probably going to lose, and I don't want to say it to scare anyone, but probably a million jobs across the
wow.
world. And that could be due to various factors, right?
Yeah,
We can talk about that
sure.
another time. But the bigger worry for me is not about the loss of jobs. What are we going to do with the people, the talent finders and talent seekers, to be able to find each other?
Correct.
And that's my personal mission as well, which I am on and Scientific is on, and we're building a product around that. But I think the important thing is, where is that missing component going to come? And that's very, very important. And that's hitting us very, very hard as we take up every single day in the next 3 years.
And I think it's not an easy mission to be on at all. I'm sure this is just going to continue to evolve and create scenarios which may be tough for people to adapt to. And wish you all the very best for the kind of product that you're building. And I hope it really serves the purpose. I'm kind of going back to the question that I asked earlier, and this time I want to take a slightly more broader perspective on culture of organizations. With so much of diversity of people. One, I think diversity meaning one different kind of people within the same organization across geographies, working across different customers these days. How do you think culture of the organization is evolving, and what do you think is 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 your view or reading of the current situation? Is there something that is missing, and can something be done to rectify it?
That's a great question. And I was with a client recently where at a board level where this came up in a big way. And it's on everyone's mind nowadays. This is the second question beyond talent, which is on everyone's mind. What's happening at the workforce is that we are getting a more diverse workforce than ever before
Yeah.
for two very broad reasons. One is there's a multi generation workforce like never before. They're almost like three or four segments of experience groups inside an organization working together, which leads to communication disconnects, which leads
Mm,
to dispersion of the communication at a level which is not seen before. It does not really go down across the organization with the laser pointer you used to have
sure.
just a few years back or a decade back. So, what's really happened is that the messages I lost
Mm,
from the CEO, from board, from the organization, from the owners, because of this multi-generation workforce, because everyone receives the message differently,
yeah, differently.
right? Everyone
Yeah.
has different context, everyone has a different lens to it, and they receive the message differently. So that is a challenge which is needs to be really addressed and seen. The second is what I call is the diverse workforce mix. When we talk about, we always talk about in the sense of humans,
Mm,
diversity amongst humans. But one thing which I started bringing in my conversations and talks is the diversity with robots,
yeah.
right? Now, they may not be the actual robot which we saw recently by an organization launched there. I'm not really talking about that era, that will come as well. But what I'm talking about, and that's like real on the doorstep, but what I'm talking about, even these bots and softwares which work with us every single day in our day-to-day affairs, right? And these programs or bots or whatever we're talking about, or if you get into machine learning and AI, they are a different personality almost together. I'm not saying they're humans, obviously, but they are developing a different personality within the organization. So it's time
Sure.
the organization takes cognizance of the fact that they're human workers and they're machine workers. Now, machine workers
Absolutely.
don't have emotions. That's okay. But machine
As
workers,
yet.
as yet, as yet, I mean, the neurologics are changing every day, as you know, and things will be changing soon. But let's assume for a moment that still don't have human level of emotions for now,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
for a few years. But the important part is that the humans still have emotions towards the machine.
Mm.
The machine is interrupting their work cycle or is interrupting or disrupting their work ethics or their career. There's emotion
Mm.
involved. So even from a human lens, there's diversity which needs to be included. We need to
Sure.
be thinking that lens when we think about our workforce of the future.
Sure.
And that is very, very important. So I would say the dialogue out there really is around at two levels to summarize. Number one is multi-generation workforce, and other is diverse workforce in the context of machines.
Sure. Sure. And what kind of solutions are being spoken about, or are is there anything that exists at this point of time, or are they merely perhaps conversations? I'm also asking about this from a perspective of how are people in the organization seeing this, right? I mean, I think as things evolve, there are layoffs that happen. There are situations which kind of eliminate a role, and when some of these uncomfortable realities hit you, though you're part of an organization, you don't know how to react to it, and that also does play a role in organizations culture going bad as well. How are are there conversations happening around these as well, that you're part of?
Yes, very much. In fact, there are a lot of conversations happening on this. Um, I'm actually very happy to share the good news that a lot of industry captains, organizations, board members, owners, CEOs, CFOs, from a cost angle as well, are thinking and talking about this. I guess what is important here is to understand that everyone has a different business and
Mm,
different way to look at it. By industry, it can mean different things. Every industry looks at it. With the consumer industry, we look at this very differently versus the services industry. And
true.
and therefore, what it implies is that the conversations as they're happening, they need to become part of the business strategy.
Sure.
I guess, and there's a great timing actually. If anyone were to take a simple advice, I think it would be that this is the part of the year when we get reflective, even from a business standpoint. And therefore, it is actually a great idea to, if you're doing a business strategy, to build it into the business strategy. So
Yeah.
one of my clients is actually, and I can't obviously share who and what, but one of my
Sure.
clients is actually
Absolutely.
actively thinking, and we are working with them to talk about how can they have a certain culture code in the organization which is understood across generations, and what is the language they need to use from a communication standpoint which can carry the key messages across the organization so that everyone is rowing in the same direction, right? I mean, why someone might say that, hey, culture and communication is so hazy. Like, why do we even worry about those things? But honestly, they're the vehicles which help people to row in the same direction because organizations have seen that if they're not been rowing in the same direction, they're faltered, right?
Yeah.
You've got to have people at least visually thinking the vision and the strategy needs to be in one direction. And we recently finished a project with an organization where we're doing their business envisioning and core values understanding. And I was very impressed with them because they were actually focused on driving that right from the top. But what that organization was mostly looking at was that how can we disseminate this to the last mile, not only to our own workforce, but even to our partners or vendors and clients, so they understand the language too.
Hmm.
Because let's not forget, the diversity is not only stops at the gate of the organization, it is
Yeah,
also
true.
changing on the client side. It's also changing on the supplier side, right? So we have to look at the larger picture, and organizations that are intelligent are looking at the larger picture that's going beyond the organization. And that inclusive and holistic picture is actually helping them to probably be a step ahead of the other organizations. And we have tested it out, and we have a very strong research on it to show that is direct connection to profitability for those who care. Because sometimes CFOs might be worried that all that is on the left, park it on the left. Let me focus on getting the business done. But frankly, that is business now. That is going to drive sales. That is going to drive profitability. That is the
Okay.
connection which needs to be done to make sure delivery is efficient.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I mean, I think we used to say in the past that, people experience is equal to client experience. And I think all of that is coming together when we talk about, how organizations are looking at culture now, which is great. Switching gears now, coming back to you and your career. And there's something very interesting that happened in 2019 where you wrote the book. And I'm sure it was not the 2019 year, but the works for several years that kind of culminated in that year when the book came out and continues to be the top seller in many of the platforms as well. Do you want to walk us through that journey? I'm sure there would have been a trigger. Something would have happened for you to think about wanting to write a book, perhaps a bit about the process of writing the book as well, and anything that you'd like to share about the book itself.
That's my favorite topic. It really got me there. So, see, I have a side of me which really thinks a lot about what's happening to everyone else besides me.
Hmm.
And as much as I love pursuing my own career and my own journey, I am incredibly, concerned about what's happening in the social setup to other
Yeah.
careers around me as well. And through my career, I have, as a young leader, and much later as a little senior leader, or as I grew up in my career, I've cared for my teams a lot, because I believe that if I don't care for my teams or help them get guided, it won't change. But at the same time, um, I have also been into scenarios when I've reached crossroads in my career at that point of time. So there was a certain organization I was working for where I was doing really well. I had everything you could ask for, the golden miles. I was traveling, you know, across the world, had
Yeah.
great house, car, I mean, memberships, all that stuff which you typically check box, right?
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate to get all of that very early in my career. I was in my very early 40s. And I'm not very old even now. I'm very, very young. But, just at the cusp of that 40, when I got that, I started getting bored in my career. And I said, like, hey, listen, what's happening to me? Why am I getting bored, right? I have everything. People, and I have great teams at work. I'm enjoying my work as well. There's something in me which is not helping me spring out of the bed at the same way I used to earlier. And it's got
Hmm.
nothing to do with my happiness at work. I still enjoy my work. I am doing well in my career.
Sure.
And that's where I picked up the phone. I started talking to a lot of mentors of and the CEOs I had hired in my much earlier stint as a headhunter in my career, and other people. And I interviewed close to about, and when I say interview, I'm not really talking formal interview, but I spoke to almost, I think, close to over 100 people over a period of time. And I realized that almost 80% of them had gone through a moment in their career where they felt exactly the same I was feeling. They had
Hmm.
suddenly hit the sharp turn in the road, where they were doing well, but they were not excited. They're doing well, but they're not driving to work with that excitement anymore. And something was not like rising on this skin. And I said, I'm onto something because obviously it's happening to everyone. And therefore, I read books like Ikigai. I read other books like on the social contract and things like that. And I've always been a voracious reader, so I read a lot of books. I could not get my answers. It is not about being happy and finding the work. It's not about
Mm.
the cross section of finding that joy in your life and all of that. All that is amazing. But practically, you still need to work and you need to earn a salary to
Yeah.
get your family and your kids and everything. So all that has to happen on the side. But
Yeah.
still, you got to be excited because if you are a high achiever, you probably reach that moment very fast in your career.
Yeah.
So that is where Breakthrough was born. My book, Breakthrough, The Framework for Inspired Career, it's a very scientific title, but I left it like that because it was actually a research manual. And the reason we developed that framework was because I thought about the career into four quadrants: A, B, C, and D. Very simple.
Mm.
And I wrote the book in a way that I compressed it down till it reached 120 pages or so that one can read in a flight. Into a 2 hour
Yeah.
flight, you can just wrap up the book. But the idea was that when you hit that movement, which I call the Bermuda Triangle movement, when you're flying your plane, everything is sunny and bright, the clouds are looking nice, and suddenly you feel you're over a Bermuda Triangle out of nowhere, and then there are droplets of the lightning, thunders, rain coming down, and you don't know what hit you. And that happens due to another concept which I've spoken about in my book is called EKD, experiential knowledge dump, right?
Mm.
Because what happens, we get tone deaf. We have so much experience with age and experience over 18 years, 15 years, 20 years, that we start only listening to ourselves. We
Yeah.
stop paying attention to the other sign language around us. And it's happened to a lot of General Motor, I mean, a lot of CEOs across the world at different points of time. And either tons and tons of those examples in my book. So we got to therefore be aware, very conscious about that Bermuda Triangle movement should not hit us. So my book talks about not only how to avoid the Bermuda Triangle movement, but
Mhm.
also how can you, whichever quadrant you might be in, quadrant A, B, C, or D in your career stage, you can leap or pivot to a success mantra, and it's not like a formal out so on, but how you can cross the bridge of fear to invent yourself much earlier than that moment hits you. And even if you've been hit by the moment, you lost a job or something's gone wrong, uh, there are a few ways I've researched and plugged into my book on some very clear, articulated methods, practiced and tested by other people in the world who are successful, that how you could actually leap to your next thing, your next change, without damaging yourself too much. So it's at best you can say it's a really strong practical guide, a navigator towards someone's true north. And I'm very fortunate that I've got great reviews from across the world. And like I shared with you the other day, it continues to sell very hard across the world. But my true happiness is not as an author only that it sells, but also it is that it's making a difference to a lot of people in their lives. And that's what I'm loving most.
Surely one guy is here. So
Very kind
so
of
thank you
you.
for that. I think, yeah, it's been a great read, and I've read it multiple times, and I found it to be so easy to read, of course, and then the frameworks have been incredible to apply and use in your day to day lives and careers as well. Um, Ashu, one other thing that I think you also mentioned to me when we spoke last was how this is being now used in academic institutions as well. Do you want to quickly share a bit more about that?
Sure, sure. Very happy to. Thank you for asking that question. So, one of the top institutions of India, I'm Ahmedabad exec program. I some time back had the fortunate chance, in all humility, to be invited to speak to the exec program, and it was a great conversation. This was when the book was just out that time, and
Mm.
and uh, It's actually now also being referred to as one of the books in some of the institutions which are running exec programs across different places. The reason why it's been picked up as a reference book in exec program is not because it is an MBA book, not because it teaches you how to do a better business, but it teaches you
Yeah.
how to do better career. I think
Yeah.
doing a better career is as good as getting better business. And if you want to be really useful to people, you need to be useful to yourself first.
Yeah.
And that's what uh, I think it's people who are at the cusp, whether they're looking for second careers, people who follow exec programs are Gopal, mostly those guys who are maybe coming out of the veterans for military service. They could be people shifting careers from a HR career to a business career, industry career to another industry, and so on and so forth, right? Or who are just pivoting to in their career from learning more at an exec program of a reputed institute and taking that forward. And I think that's where the very kindly the some of the institutes found it very useful to plug it in the exec program because as a reference book because people could relate to it from where it goes
Sure.
into the
Sure.
next leap they want to make, along with of course what they were studying.
Sure.
So thanks
Sure.
for asking that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that as well. And I think it's important because executive education is something that people often take as an option to upskill themselves. And if they find if if the education in itself is the what, perhaps the book could be the how of making the most out of what they're learning. So thank you for that. Ashu, one of the aspects that kind of comes out very clearly in the book is about the mindset. Terms like fixed mindset, growth mindset are overly used these days, and some of it also perhaps doesn't really make sense at some point of times. Do you want to quickly walk through people on what mindset and growth mindset specifically in terms of careers should mean, and what could people do to kind of create mindsets like that that would help them?
This is a great question again, Gopal, and this is a topic one can talk for an hour by itself.
Yes, I'm surely.
But what I would say is mindset, in very simply put, mindset is the dialogue you're having with yourself.
Hmm.
So if you're going through a scenario in your career, in your business as an entrepreneur, or whatever you're facing, what you're dealing with, very practically, are you having a dialogue with yourself? And what
Hmm.
that means is that, in other words, how are you receiving the feedback from the market or from your board of mentors or from people who are consuming what you talk about
Sure.
as a professional or as a leader or as a businessman, whatever, businesswoman, whatever it is. And receiving that feedback and then having a conversation with yourself to say that what is the mindset I need to overcome that and flow like a river, right?
Sure.
From the side of whatever the rock might be or obstacle might be. And that is very important because we sometimes hit a place where we get stuck to the wall in front of us and we don't see anything beyond it, which leads to a depressive mindset, which leads to a
Hmm.
defeatist mindset, and which leads us to actually take a few strides back in our career. So I was seeing a movie I love movies and they are big teachers to me as well. I forgot to mention in
Yeah.
my earlier dialogue. And one of the movies, Ice Age, I think two, if I remember right, had the squirrel having a nut stuck in the ice. And I quote this
Hmm.
often, and was not able to take it out. Right? It was badly stuck there. And then one of the other mates out there for the squirrel said, would you like to change your angle? Maybe you can pull it out. And the squirrel changed the angle of approaching it and was able to successfully take the nut out of the ice.
Wow.
So I think that's the mindset. That's a
Hmm.
dialogue with yourself. That are you getting stuck in a certain mindset, looking at the wall in front of you? Are you willing to switch that mindset and change the angle for yourself. Because obviously, if something's not being successful by trying it again and again, by doing that seven times more, you're not going to succeed, right?
Mm,
Persistence is important, but with intelligence, they go
mm,
together. And the intelligence here is to self-talk, understand that, talk to mentor, and change that angle, bring that refreshed view to it with a mindset which you can go forward. Growth mindset within the mindset is that you got to develop a broader understanding of what are your faculties which can assist you to be successful. Because sometimes we as humans discount a lot of good qualities we have. In my executive coaching, I often refer to this as root DNA. Root DNA is that the skills which we are born with, sometimes we say these are gifts, but other words also for it is that things which we know from a long time, people complimented us on, they thought we're great at, and we lost it over a period of time, right? How can we look at that in a way that it can not be a fraction of what it was before, but a full side of what it should be? And that coupled with our refreshed mindset leads to a growth mindset. So I don't know if I was trying to make it as simple as possible, if that makes sense,
yeah,
but that is how I look at it.
sure. I'll be honest, I don't think I could have heard a more simpler version of the definition of mindset and growth mindset, to be honest, because the textbook definition of often doesn't have the experience factor. And I think what you shared is based on what you have gone through yourself. I know I'm mindful of time. I know you have other engagements. I have a few rapid fire questions for you, which probably will um, allow the world to see a little bit different side of you, and based, I mean, from what they have heard so far. So the first question that I would have is tea, coffee, or something else that keeps you going.
Green tea,
Lovely. What's the one thing that you start your day always with?
self reflection on what was yesterday and what's going to happen today.
Wonderful. Do you do journaling as well, or is it just that you take moment to sit yourself and think through?
I do journaling, I write a lot, and writing is my favorite passion. Some gets published, some I don't publish. It's for myself. But yes,
Sure.
I express myself through writing a lot.
Wonderful. A hobby or passion outside work that surprises people.
Hmm. I have a few. Surprises would be a hard one, um, but I'm learning cooking. I would say that more recently, in the new way that I've not the way that I've known cooking for, but new way that it can be effective and something which I can help my wife to be, much more useful. Because what's happening is we have always had a beautiful home where both of us had helped each other. But I'm realizing that that's one art I never picked up, and she's very good at
Hmm.
it. So along with her career, so I think that's something I'm picking up as a hobby. And the other thing which I'd like to add is I've recently picked up a guitar and something
Oh
which has
wow.
already always foxed me. And again, nothing new, nothing shocking for a lot of people who probably know a lot of it. But I've been enjoying playing it, and just for myself.
Lovely, lovely. Perhaps we'll end up seeing a couple of clips of the guitar very soon.
I don't think so. That's more for me, but yeah, I shared very openly since you asked. Yeah,
Sure, sure. Um, One piece of advice that you'd like to give to your younger self.
I would definitely say that, dear Ashu, uh, there's a beautiful journey ahead, but you'd be wiser if you get a board of mentors and counsels, not when you turn 35, but when you're 28.
Lovely, lovely. I think that's one advice that a lot of people would take a lot of benefit from. And the last question: when is your next book coming?
That's a beautiful question. So actually, in between, I had a silent launch of my Hindi version of the same book
Oh,
called
lovely.
Swambhu. Swambhu got launched about a couple of months back, but I didn't announce it as yet. I'm just waiting for to get a little more free, and then there are a lot of talks lined up. The reason I did it in Hindi is because that's a language is spoken by a lot of people in India, and I was told that I'm being unfair by writing in English because English, of course, is a very common language, but there are a
Sure.
lot of people who are aspiring to be amazing in their career, and they understand Hindi better. I was in fact surprised that lots of parts of the world, like Canada and the US and Africa and some parts of Europe, also there are people who read Hindi a lot. So that book has come out. It's known as Swambhu. It's available on Amazon already. And But my new book, which is actually a fiction called, I don't want to name it. It'll be wrong because I'm under NDA.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
it's actually a fiction linked to our human lives. That should be coming out in mid 25 or maybe before that.
Sure. Sure. Wonderful. Wonderful. Looking forward to that. Any parting thoughts for the audience listening in?
Well, whoever is listening it, first of all, you did a great job to listen in. So thank Gopal for it. And I guess if you ever find yourself in a place where, or a spot where you're thinking about what we discuss on the show, feel free to ping me or Gopal. Very happy to assist you. I think all of us got a place in the sky and us under the sun to make a big difference. And I would strongly urge you to request you to relook, reflect what you do today. It's New Year time almost. Diwali and Christmas are nearby, and it's a perfect timing to reflect like never before on what you're doing, what you want to do, and how can you change the way what you do. So that's my parting message.
Thank you so much, Ashu. Really appreciate you joining us today. To everyone who's tuned in today or will catch up this episode later, thank you for being part of this wonderful conversation with Ashutosh Sinha. I hope the remarkable journey and the discussion about navigating career breakthroughs, leadership, and purpose have encouraged you to reflect on your own career path and the opportunities that lie ahead. As Ashu highlighted, embracing change and staying resilient are essential not just to survive, but also thrive in ever changing work environment. Whether it's leading the diverse teams or shifting careers, the power to grow and succeed comes from being open to new challenges and constantly reinventing. We are in exciting times of transformation, and as Ashu and many of our past guests have shown and shared, thriving in this dynamic world requires resilience, adaptability, and a vision of where you want to go next. I can't wait to bring more thought provoking stories and actionable advice in the upcoming episodes. Until then, stay open, stay adaptable, and keep listening to the Career Shifts podcast on LinkedIn, YouTube, YouTube Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. See you all soon. And remember, keep shifting forward and wishing you all and your families a very happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali to everyone, and thank you again, Gopal.
Thank you so much.